I knew that Brian worked somewhere in downtown New York, but I didn't know exactly where. And so I emailed him saying, "Hey, I hope you are okay, and you weren't involved in any way with the attacks." And he emailed me back like the next day saying, "Hey, I was in the World Trade Center and got out, and I'm okay." So I'm going to be reading an excerpt from the book There's a Road to Everywhere Except Where You Came From. And this is a memoir by a good friend of mine named Brian Charles, who grew up in Galesburg, Michigan. He went to Gull Lake High School. And this is his account of escaping World Trade Center towers on 9/11. This is part of the 9/11 anniversary library project. The clock radio alarm went off at 6:40. My eyes were dry. I was thirsty. The Xanax was working. My limbs and head were heavy. I felt chained to the bed. As I listened to Howard Stern, I thought about calling in sick. I decided against it. Ginny was still out on her honeymoon. The department was in panic mode. I didn't want it to seem like I was slacking off in her absence. I threw back the covers and got out of bed. I showered and dressed and went into the kitchen. I opened the fire escape window and leaned out. I stood for a moment, taking in the bright day. I closed and locked the window and left the apartment. On the bus and the trains, I read Heavier Than Heaven, a new biography of Kurt Cobain. It was hugely depressing. Cobain was portrayed as a desperate and out-of-control junkie, shooting up in seedy motels in the back of his car. I was glad I hadn't known any of this when I was 17, the height of my fandom a decade ago. I walked through the concourse and took the elevator to 44. I stopped in the cafeteria for a coffee and a bagel. Up on 70, I continued reading. A few minutes later, Waylon arrived. He sat at his desk, pressed some keys, clicked the mouse. "You're in early," I said. "I have to be at that stupid class at 9, he said. He meant feedbacking your peers, part of a new Morgan Stanley initiative, a peer review system where you would anonymously evaluate your coworkers, and they in turn would evaluate you. The class was supposed to teach you how to write thoughtful, objective comments your colleagues could learn from. A rolling schedule had been established. Attendance was mandatory. Checking my email, I remembered I was taking the class today too. After Waylon settled in, the office was quiet. I returned to my book. I took a bite of bagel with peanut butter and a sip of coffee. I like to sip coffee right after mix the salty and sweet and bitter flavors in my mouth. I looked at the clock in my desk phone, 8:45. I was nearing the end of the book and thought I could finish before 9. If not, I'd keep reading. No one would tell me to stop. A moment later, I heard a noise or a series of noises, loud booms. The floor trembled. I looked up. An image came to me of a giant crane tipping over. Was there construction on one of the towers and I hadn't noticed? No, this was closer. It must be happening down the hall because Cal Leonard, a guy in accounting who had the office next to Frank's, was now yelling and wouldn't stop. Oh my God. Oh dear God. Oh my God. Oh God. I got a strange feeling and stood up. Another image came to me of a row of filing cabinets falling over. One of those big banks of filing cabinets fell over and crushed someone, I thought. Cal Leonard was still yelling. Waylon and Max were standing by Sylvia's office staring out. I walked over and stood next to them. All I could see through the windows were thousands of papers flying around. Some of the papers were burning. "Hey," said Max, "that building's on fire." Waylon and I walked over to Ginny's office and looked out. The papers were coming down in a wild flurry with orange flames on the burned ones and also a kind of thin gray haze. I went to my desk and grabbed my backpack. I walked to the hall by the elevators. A crowd had already formed there. People were shouting questions. The security guard was just standing up from his desk. "What's that now?" he said. "Something happened to the other building." We stood there waiting. No one knew what had happened. I looked around at the group. Everyone I saw looked scared. I thought of Cal Leonard's screams. We waited for an announcement. No announcement came. Someone said, the fire warden's not here. Where the is the fire warden? More people arrived. The area was jammed. Sarah was there, holding on to Blanca, her boss. Blanca was crying and wiping at her tears, but more kept coming. Waylon asked if I'd seen Lila. I said no. He went to look for her and came back alone. She must not be in yet, he said. A few minutes passed. People argued about what to do. Some said evacuate, others said wait. Some headed for the elevators. Others said no, if we're going to leave, we should take the stairs. And I was scared. I couldn't talk. I wanted someone official to get on the intercom and say what was happening. Confusion mounted. I couldn't make a decision. It was made for me. The door to a stairwell opened. It was packed with workers from higher floors already making their way down. I looked at the little plate by the door that said 70 and took my first step. A woman from sales named Sue was next to me. Sue radiated ease and composure. "Are you scared, Brian?" she said. I told her I was. "I've never seen you like this," she said. "Usually you always have something to say." We walked down a few flights. Sue fell back. Waylon appeared on my right. I heard people talking. They said a plane hit the other tower. Details beyond that were vague. A woman behind me was saying she'd seen people jumping out of windows. I turned and looked at her. Her face was red from crying. Her eyes were crazy. She didn't seem to see me. Descent was slow. We'd gone about 10 floors. The loudspeaker crackled. The line slowed and then stopped. "Be quiet. Hold up. Listen. Listen. Shut up. There is a problem in Building 1, said a voice. Building 2 is secure. I repeat, Building 2 is secure. Please return to your desks and wait further instruction. The voice repeated this message but didn't specify the problem. But the voice was official, and I was vaguely relieved. The mood in the stairwell lightened. A guy in front of me said, I'm walking back up. He brushed by me and was gone. I turned to Waylon. What do you think? I don't know. What do you think? He said. I paused for a second. Let's check it out. All right, he said. We walked to the next exit and got out of the stairwell. We were on some strange floor in the 50s. All the walls were white. I didn't see any offices. People crowded the halls. They all looked scared. They laid out possible next moves in voices pitched near total panic. The mood on the floor seemed at odds with what the voice on the speaker had said. A man walked by us shaking his head. He said bodies were falling out of the other building by the dozen. Some other guys heard this and ran to go see. My feeling of relief vanished. Waylon, this is insane. Let's get the out of here, I said. Waylon agreed. We got back in the stairwell. We kept going down. A moment later, huge sound erupted. The building shook. I slipped down the stairs. I grabbed the railing. The tower pitched forward. The tower groaned. Then it stopped and rocked back in the other direction. The huge sound was still happening, and then it wasn't anymore. People around me cried out for God. The tower swayed. It felt like it was going to break in two and fall into the street. My mind switched off. I didn't start praying. I didn't have visions of childhood. My life didn't flash before my eyes. It was a puzzling feeling. I was cold inside. Here it comes, I thought. Get ready. A moment later, I was still alive. The building was still swaying, but I was able to stand. What the f*** is happening, Waylon? Are we being bombed? No, he said. That was just the fuel tank from the plane exploding in the other tower. The fuel tank? It seemed reasonable, and Waylon had said it with such confidence. The stairwell was hot and smelled of smoke. I looked again at Waylon. His face was ashen. He was staring at a woman ahead of us. She was moving slowly, heaving her body back and forth. She was shoeless and babbling in endless prayer. Oh, please, God. Oh, please, Lord. Oh, please, God. Oh, please, Lord. I felt a need to touch people. I squeezed Waylon's shoulder. The woman behind me was sobbing. I turned around and squeezed her shoulder. I ran my hand down her back, over her sweat-soaked shirt. I smiled at the man next to her and shook his hand. "It's going to be okay," I called out, almost involuntarily. I didn't believe this, but kept saying it anyways. Sometimes the line stopped cold. We'd stand there immobile, voices above us screaming, "Don't, stop, stop, go, down, keep moving." I kept track of the floor numbers. 40, wait, 37, wait, 32, wait. I wasn't wearing a watch. I didn't know how long we'd been in there. My only frame of reference was floor numbers. Floor numbers were my life. I ticked them off slowly. Then we wound down the last 10 floors. We exited the stairwell on the mezzanine level. Police and rescue workers were there shouting instructions. They kept us moving in a line. We moved past the big windows. The plaza was filled with burning metal and smoke and ash. I didn't understand what I was seeing out there. We waited in a long line at the inoperable escalator. We walked down the lobby and into the dark mall. All the stores were empty. There was water on the ground and broken glass in the water. We walked by Banana Republic and turned left at J. Crew. Waylon and I shook hands. He gripped my shoulder. "You're pretty cool under pressure there, Bri," he said. We turned right at Sbarro and waited in another long line. A series of banners was visible, featuring cartoon twin towers inside a shopping bag over the words, "Shop the World." I walked up the escalator towards Borders. Cops hustled us along. They shouted at everyone to turn off their cell phones. "Do not look up. Whatever you do not look up. Just keep moving. Do not look up." I stepped through the door into the light of day. A man yelled through a bullhorn, "Don't stop. Go up Fulton to Broadway." The air smelled of acrid smoke. Debris blanketed the pavement. Ash floated down. Sirens blared. I felt the pull of whatever was behind me. I turned around and looked up.